I'm Mark Sponsler, and welcome to the Stormsurf Video Surf Forecast for the week starting Sunday, December 18th.
Stormsurf, waves, weather, buoys, altimetry, snow, temperatures, El Nino, weather analysis, essential data for outdoor people, all the time, no hype.
Be sure and like and subscribe. Ring the bell. You get automatic notifications when the videos are posted, typically on Sunday evenings. All right, let's get to work. We start by looking at significant wave heights to the North Pacific Ocean. And yes, the models are updated. The wave models were down for a little over a week. We had some technical difficulties, but we've managed to resolve that now. Everything's back up and running the way it should. So that's good news. All right. So, looking at significant wave heights for the North Pacific Ocean, we see an area of 28-foot seas falling southeast, targeting Hawaii. That's the next in a series of gales that are slowly starting to build over the West Pacific and make inroads to the east. The beginnings of another gale is also starting to show off the Kuril Islands with 28, maybe 29-foot seas aimed off to the east. Looking at surf conditions in Northern California, we look at the Point Reyes buoy number 029. We're looking at all the energy that's present at hitting the buoy, anywhere from up to 33.3 seconds, which there is none, the whole way down to 5-second period pure wind chop. We see little bits of energy. This is 0.9 of a foot at 14.3 seconds, something in that range. So a little bump of energy at about 14 seconds and then some wind swell mixed in. If you go and actually integrate the area under the curve, you see the primary swell is 1.4 feet at 14.5 seconds. So that calculates out to roughly about 2.1 foot surf. And that's about right. Southern California, we look at the Point Loma South buoy number 191. That's down off of San Diego. Not a whole lot of energy or even less energy hitting the buoy. Pure swell, 0.8 of a foot at 16.8 seconds. That's surf of about 1.4 feet. Yeah, there are some thigh-high sets, something like that, coming in at top spots. And then finally, we look at buoy 106, the Waimea Bay buoy in Hawaii, North Shore. We see definite swell hitting, smaller though than the day or two before. 13.3 second energy, 3.5 seconds in that one spot, but it's all the area under the curve that matters here. That comes out to primary swell of 5.4 feet at 12.6 seconds. That's about 7-foot Hawaiian surf, and that's about what it is. There's definitely waves, one of the only places in the spots that we're forecasting for today. So what's the future going to bring us in the next week? Well, we start by looking at jet stream level winds. These winds up about 30,000 feet help support the formation of gales, and when they form, help direct their track. We're looking for a trough, a dip in the jet, and we see that right here. In fact, look at the jet. For the first time this entire winter, it's looking pretty solid. A consolidated flow pushing off of Japan and the Kuril Islands at 200, maybe even 210 knots, then falling hard south. What that's helped create is an eddy aloft and down at the ocean surface. That's the hallmark of low pressure. Low pressure, of course, if it's strong enough, generates winds. Winds, if they're strong enough, get traction on the ocean surface and generate seas. As those seas radiate away from the fetch area, they turn into swell. And swell, when it hits your beach, turns into surf. So we have a trough. Hawaii is right there. U.S. West Coast here. Kuril Islands and Japan right here. We have a trough developing northwest of Hawaii, falling south and deepening with a hefty flow of energy pushing down into the trough. But east of there, really a pretty slack wind pattern is indicated. Now moving into Monday, the trough continues to deepen. Hawaii is right here, the apex of the trough right in here, almost pushing right over Hawaii, but getting more pinched. That'll limit the lows or this whatever develops here ability to get too big. But notice as we get into Monday night into Tuesday the 20th in the morning, the apex of the trough pushes directly, sweeps over the Hawaiian Islands. That'll make for some definite local weather there. We talk about atmospheric rivers pushing into the U.S. West Coast and creating rain and snowfall. Well, basically, same thing happening here. for Hawaii, just much further out in the ocean. Anyway, the trough continues and pushing off to the east as we get into Tuesday and weakening. But notice winds start building again off Japan as we get into Wednesday night and Thursday, again at 190 to almost 200 knots, but now sort of missing the Hawaiian Islands, sweeping a little bit further to the north. And notice the energy is making it further across the Pacific with each pulse of the jet stream, and the jet stream remaining consolidated, in this case, almost the whole way to the Pacific Northwest coast. So we get into Friday, just more of the same, new trough digging out here in the western Gulf of Alaska, lifting northeast pretty quick. We're into Saturday, the 24th of December. The jet looking very nice indeed, pushing the whole way to the Gulf of Alaska with another little trough forecast on Sunday, the 25th of December, Christmas Day, and then even continuing beyond that with a consolidated flow a week from now, pushing into the Pacific Northwest. This is exactly what we want to see, much more supportive of gale development and therefore surf and weather into the California coast. So next we go down to the surface level pressure and surface level winds. Will the trough in the upper atmosphere, or is it actually doing anything down at the surface? Clearly it is. Low pressure here developing, not particularly deep like a 984 millibar low, but generating 40 to 45 knot north winds aimed directly at the Hawaiian Islands. That's on Sunday. So we get into Monday, the front or the weather from this system starts sweeping over the Hawaiian Islands with west to northwest winds at 25 knots. That's pretty solid. Certainly will blow out any north and northwest facing break, but still generating swell with 40 knot winds in its core. And then as we get into Tuesday, the low continues pushing over the islands with that Kona northwest flow, but slowly lifting up and out of the way as we get into Wednesday. But then the next system, in fact, you can see this, it's a broad, massive low pressure system just circulating with pieces of energy wrapping around it. Another small low. In fact, look at this, 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 tiny little lows all circulating in some degree. One of them's, well, actually 2 at 1, 2, 3, 4 as we get into Friday start circulating, each generating at least 35 knot winds, if not this one 40 knot winds, and lifting north into Saturday. More energy behind that. It's just a whole stream. Look at this, getting very close to the U.S. West Coast as well with 45 knot northwest winds aimed at California. That certainly should generate some swell. And yet another system behind that pushing over the dateline with 35 knot easterly winds. So a rather vigorous pattern is looking to set up. So what's the effect of those winds on the ocean surface? And we're going back in time to Saturday, the 17th of December, that little system that's starting to build aimed at Hawaii. It developed on the dateline with 26-foot seas, falling south on Sunday morning with 28.9-foot seas, and building from there. Let's go look forward. So the gale is supposed to continue building with 30-foot seas. In fact, we'll push away here, as you can see it there, the purple, 30-foot seas, pretty close to the Hawaiian Islands. What's that? 1, 2, it's about maybe 750 miles away from the Hawaiian Islands. And then 18 to nearly 20-foot seas sweeping over at least Kauai as we get into Monday night and early Tuesday. And there you go, 20-foot seas, theoretically even into the north shore of Oahu. But all very local, very raw, jumbled swell. If you want to get something rideable, you need to find an extremely protected break. Off to the north, another system starts building. In fact, let's go back just a little bit here and look. There we go. This is actually on tonight. 40-foot seas off the Kurill Islands, pushing off to the east, fading, and pretty much out of there. Long distance swell possible for Hawaii and the U.S. West Coast. Then as we get into Wednesday, another series of not super well organized, but certainly stormy weather starts developing on the dateline and the northern dateline. 23-foot seas aimed southeast and east. Certainly swell for the Hawaiian Islands and something for the U.S. West Coast, but a long ways away. But then as we get into the coming weekend, right before Christmas, 2 systems with 26-foot seas, another with 26-foot seas off of Japan, all radiating east and then northeast. It's like there's a wall right here about 600 miles off the California coast, preventing these systems from fully moving onshore. And then we get into, where are we? We're about a week out now. You just get the general sense. Continued, not super monster, well-organized systems, but a continuous series of small gales should produce copious amounts of 13-second period swell for the Hawaiian Islands and the U.S. West Coast as we get deeper into, or the better part of a week from now. Looking at local winds, we're going to focus here on Hawaii for the most part. A light wind regime is off the U.S. West Coast today, and you can see light south winds starting to build as the next system approaches the Hawaiian Islands. So we get into Monday, there's your 20-knot west winds building to, there you go, about 25, almost 30 knots. This would be fairly early on Monday Hawaiian time and continuing through the day while a light wind regime holds for California. Into Tuesday, more of the same, 20 to 25 knot winds for the Hawaiian Islands, turning a little bit more northwesterly. Light winds for California. So we get into Wednesday, things start clearing out for the Hawaiian Islands. Light wind regime for California. Thursday, more of the same for California. Things finally clearing up and cleaning up for Hawaii. And then as we get into Friday, here comes the next series of system, but off to the north, not quite as strong. Yes, some sort of degree of northwest winds forecast, but I think as you get even closer to the islands, it might not be that bad. Light winds for the California coast. Saturday, here we go. 1, 2, 3 fetch areas. Light south winds for the Hawaiian Islands. Light winds for California. As we get into Sunday, still more of the same. And look at this, another system with supposedly 50-knot winds aimed right at the U.S. West Coast and not too far away, and lifting north towards Vancouver Island with more behind that. Light winds, though a bit of a front, trying to make it into Cape Mendocino as we get a week out from now, if you believe the models. So we had a great dump of snow, 52 inches for the North Tahoe region from the last series of storms. That was about a week ago. Let's see if there's anything more coming. Kind of suspect not, at least immediately in the next week, because there's been that wall we're talking about just off the coast. Yes, perhaps a little bit of rain into Cape Mendocino Tuesday night into Wednesday, but not making it down to Tahoe, not making it to the San Francisco Bay Area. Everything being shunted off to the north, and we continue on into Saturday, and then Sunday, perhaps another front trying to organize. How close will it get? Well, the model says maybe a glancing into Cape Mendocino, but we think there are better things coming beyond that. Looking at the snow forecast dashboard for Squaw Valley, Palisades, Tahoe. Now this goes out 10 days, so after Christmas, but theoretically accumulations of maybe 39 inches at Palisades, Tahoe. Kirkwood seeing about 35 inches. And even Mammoth getting in the action with maybe 32 inches of snow. The freezing level for Palisades, Tahoe. So this is elevation here. This is the base of Squaw. This is the top of Squaw at about 9,000 feet. The gray is sleet. The white is the transition to the freezing line right here. So you can see freezing levels at about 7,000 feet for the next couple of days. As we get into the later part of December 21st, the freezing level starts really going up to 12,000 feet. So soft, probably, I wouldn't want to say spring-like conditions, but certainly softer snow as we get through the Christmas couple of days. But then with the approaching front and snow, you can see it lining up here, snow up here, temperatures falling, the front approaching theoretically, and by December 27th, freezing level below the base. All right, let's go take a look long-term. What's going on with the Madden Julian Oscillation and the El Nino Southern Oscillation? These two oscillations are the best predictors of long-term potential for surf and snow and weather in the Pacific Basin. We'll start by looking at winds on the equator. We're looking for signs of the active phase of the MJO, the Madden Julian Oscillation. There's two phases to it, an active and an inactive phase. Active phase on one side of the planet, the inactive phase on the other. They rotate around the planet on the equator from west to east. What we're looking for is signs of the active phase of the MJO moving over the Pacific. When it gets over the Pacific, it takes 5 weeks, maybe 6 weeks, something like that, to traverse from West Pacific to East Pacific. The active phase is like a low-pressure system. What it does is it actually helps dampen trade winds when it traverses the Pacific on the equator. It imparts energy to the jet stream, and a stronger jet stream in turn feeds storm development and therefore wave production. All right, so we start by looking at trade winds on the equator. This is data from the TAO buoy array series of buoys used for monitoring El Nino, but it's also pretty good for checking out the potential for the active phase, the MJO. We're just looking at the arrows. Arrows trades out of the east pretty strong in the East Pacific, really strong over the Central Pacific, but lighter over what we call the Kelvin wave generation area, the far West Pacific. In fact, this is the equator here. The date line is right there. This is New Guinea right here, and the Pacific pretty much ends off here. So it's this area right in here we're most interested in. But we're not interested in the actual wind speed. We'll look at the anomalies, the difference from normal for this time of year. Yeah, winds are pretty strong over the east and the East Pacific, but looking at these arrows, they're not just a little bit stronger than normal. Same deal, maybe moderately stronger over the Central Pacific. In the Kelvin wave generation area, just weakly stronger than normal. This is actually a good thing. We really want to see these arrows reverse and be coming out of the west, but given that we're in La Nina, how long and persistent it's been, just to have a slackening of the trades is important. Remember, La Nina is really signifying the absence of the active phase of the MJO. It's high pressure building over the Pacific. That in turn increases the strength of trade winds, which increases upwelling, which prevents evaporation and creates colder water on the equator. And then it just turns into a self-reinforcing cycle of nothing but raging trade winds and less than normal low pressure in the Pacific, both in the southern hemisphere and the northern hemisphere in their winters. And that results in less than normal surf. So what's the forecast for the next week? So here's the bit of bad news, and you can see it if you know what you're looking at, but we'll get it oriented. This is the east-west component of the wind. Are the winds blowing stronger out of the east or stronger out of the west? The blues, purples are stronger than normal easterly anomalies. One can consider that the inactive phase of the MJO. Reds, yellows, oranges are westerly anomalies, the active phase of the MJO. Now, this is the whole planet on one chart, so the date line runs right up the middle. The far West Pacific is about 135 east, so right there. So this area is really what we're interested in, because when the active phase moves over this area, that's when it does all its magic in terms of imparting energy to the jet stream and feeding storm development. So today and the past couple of days, you can see weak westerly anomalies have been on the date line. That's good. That imparts energy to the jet stream. But now moving forward for the next week, at least according to this model, easterly anomalies are supposed to start picking up and become very strong on the date line. Westerly anomalies working their way into the West Pacific, filling about half the Kelvin wave generation area. So this is kind of a mixed bag. We have westerly anomalies trying to push into the West Pacific, making some headway, but then being blunted by strong easterly anomalies over the date line. The GFS model is showing a pretty healthy jet stream and getting continually stronger through the week. So we're not sure how much this is really impacting. One would say these strong easterly anomalies might have a real negative impact on the jet stream, but at least as of right now, the GFS model is not picking up on that at all. So let's look 2 weeks out. We're looking at outgoing long wave radiation. In other words, cloud cover. The more cloud cover, that would be associated with the active phase of the MJO. Less cloud cover would be high pressure, the inactive phase of the MJO. Blues are more cloud cover, the active phase of the MJO. Yellows, less cloud cover. So this model is suggesting, oh, and let's get oriented. The equator right there, date line right there, South and Central America there, New Guinea, Australia, Kelvin wave generation area, right there. That's where we're interested in. See, it per the statistic model, a weak inactive signal possibly setting up over the next 5, 10, 15 days. That per the statistic model. The dynamic model pretty much showing some flavor of that as well, but with the active phase making more progress into the West Pacific. Just a little bit more. Both of them pretty much suggesting pretty close to the same thing. So we'll say they're both saying more or less a neutral pattern, biased, weakly inactive, but then fading with a weak active signal coming right behind it, 2 weeks out. Phase diagrams drill in a little bit deeper. How do you read this chart? Well, the active phase of the MJO moves from west to east, from the Indian Ocean over the maritime continent into the West Pacific, to the East Pacific, under the United States. Remember, it's on the equator, across the Atlantic, over Africa, back to the Indian Ocean. The heavy dot is where the active phase is, so in the Indian Ocean, and the further the dot is outside of this circle, if we're out here on the edges, then it's very strong. So exceedingly weak. This is the forecast track here. Moving to the maritime continent 2 weeks from now and exceedingly weak. The GEFS model says, well, the active phase may be a little bit stronger and maybe making a little bit more headway 2 weeks out into the West Pacific, but still, all in all, pretty weak. The upper level model, and I think this is a little bit older, yeah, this is from the 16th. Upper level model showing areas favorable for precipitation. The greens favorable for precipitation, that'd be the active phase of the MJO. Oranges and reds, drier air, the inactive phase of the MJO. 40 days out, 5 days per panel, going out 40 days. South America, Central America, the equator right there, date line roughly there, New Guinea there, Kelvin wave generation area right there. This model suggesting, well, the weak favorable active phase over the Pacific, making its way across the Pacific into about, I will say roughly somewhere in mid-January. And after that, an equally weak inactive phase of the MJO and drier air pushing across the Pacific. Let's keep digging. Next up, the CFS model going out 1 month. Again, this is east and west anomalies, zonal wind anomalies, up at about 850 millibars, about 4,700 feet. But that's good proxy for what's going on down at the surface. All right, and again, let's get ourselves oriented. The date line running right up the middle here. Kelvin wave generation area, West Pacific starts about 135 east, so right in there. This is the whole planet on one chart. Okay, the blues, easterly anomalies, and you can see persistent La Nina easterly anomaly pattern. But today, little bits of westerly anomalies over the date line. The dotted contour here is the inactive phase of the MJO, a clear inactive signal, probably the strongest one we've seen here in a bit, pushing its way across the Pacific, interacting with an equatorial Rossby wave, producing stronger than normal easterly anomalies on the date line, while westerly anomalies pretty strong over the maritime continent. Actually, you look at this line right here between where the easterly anomalies stop and neutral anomalies set up. That line is right at about 150 east, so maybe 30 to 40% into the Kelvin wave generation area. And this is really good news. That pattern started somewhere, well, in October there was a little push, but little bit at a time, the reds and the oranges are making further and further progress into the West Pacific. That's, we think, helping to dampen trade winds in the West Pacific and start to cut the legs out of La Nina. Now notice as we get into mid-December, the active phase, the solid contour here, starts pushing into the West Pacific, dragging westerly anomalies partway into the Kelvin wave generation area, but fading. But still, this sort of homeostasis is set up where easterly anomalies on the date line, westerly anomalies creeping into the West Pacific. A change is definitely starting to set up. And then finally, the 3-month CFS model. Now, the forecast is on the top, past performance is on the bottom. The date line runs right up the middle here. Kelvin wave generation area starting somewhere around about here. You can see still this persistent, the yellows are westerly anomalies encroaching into the Kelvin wave generation area steadily. Now this strong bit of easterly anomalies, unfortunately, by this time, And people have been asked, well, how can we go look and see what the models were doing months ago? And I can't easily do it. All I have is forecast data, but I can tell you from looking at this, this should not be here. So this looks like a resurgence of La Nina. That said, the dividing line between the two is about still 150 east. So westerly anomalies, even though the easterly anomalies are to build here in the next week, right around Christmas, over the date line, westerly anomalies slowly making continued progress, and by the first or second week in January, pretty much easterly anomalies fade out, and by the time we're into February, westerly anomalies are in control of the Kelvin wave generation area. Let's overlay the MJO. Dotted contour is the inactive phase of the MJO. We know it's traversing over the dateline right now, feeding those easterly anomalies. But very quickly, well, literally within a week, the active phase of the MJO should be starting to make inroads into the Pacific, dragging westerly anomalies in with it, and really putting the squash on easterly anomalies. Then theoretically, as we get to February, easterly anomalies are gone for good. Westerly anomalies take over the Kelvin wave generation area, and from then on, the jet stream and the storm track theoretically should be in pretty good shape. Now we overlay the low pass filter. This is the El Nino La Nina indicator. The dotted contour, high pressure bias over the dateline. Looking forward, you see the second contour fading out around January 27th. We were hoping it was going to be more like January 15th, but La Nina just is not going to give up its grip. The primary contour, though, as we get into February, is completely out of the Kelvin wave generation area. The low pressure bias, this is the El Nino signal, slowly from here forward, inching into the West Pacific. Every mile it makes deeper into the West Pacific is improving the odds for a stronger jet stream and a stronger storm track. By the time we get to mid-February, pretty much La Nina is dead, and we won't say El Nino, but at least a neutral pattern is to be taking hold. All right, so the models and the El Nino, La Nina, the fading of La Nina doesn't look so good with those easterly anomalies on the dateline, but it's interesting. The ocean already thinks a change is occurring, and let's examine that. First, we're going to look at ocean subsurface temperatures down in the ocean, 100, 200, 300 meters. That's almost 1,000 feet down. We're just looking at data from the anchor lines on the TAO buoys. Sensors on those anchor lines collect temperature data down in the ocean. That gets relayed to a central processing facility. Use a model to find out where the contours, the isobars, whatever you want to call them, the thermocline is, where the warm water is and where it isn't. What we want to see is warm water sloshing off to the east in the form of a Kelvin wave or any way we can get it, because more warm water in the East Pacific enhances evaporation, and that helps drag the jet stream and impart energy into the Pacific Basin. All right, so looking at the 29-degree isotherm, well, it's not here, nor has it been for a while. The 28-degree isotherm, though, is making significant progress. It's been back at 175 east for weeks, if not months, moving to 180 to the dateline today. The 26-degree isotherm, it's been around 153, moving to about 151 or 152 west today. And the 24-degree isotherm, so it's backtracked a little bit, but you see a little hint of it right here off of Ecuador. I think it was at 130 last week. It's given up 2 degrees, but that's not horribly bad, but it's not the actual temperatures, it's the anomalies, difference from normal for this time of year. And here, major progress is going on. We see a massive pool of warmer than normal water, and it's been steadily moving off to the east now for the past month, I'd say, with the leading edge of it, at least according to this, at 110 west. Ecuador's off here a little bit, but so it's past. If you go due south from Southern California, it's further east than that, almost making it the whole way across the Pacific. Probably in the next month that'll happen, and suggesting that, well, trades have weakened and warm water is starting to slosh to the east. Here's another model. This one runs about a week behind. It's the 14th of December, but it's saying the same thing. Basically, you can see warmer than normal temperatures reaching to about 120 west, and this has been the most conservative model. It's now showing the coldest waters just right at about 100 west, getting pushed to the surface. The warm water is literally acting like a bulldozer, pushing east, squeezing the cold water to the surface, and what's going to be left behind is much warmer temperatures. At some point, this is a Kelvin wave, and when it reaches Ecuador, it will erupt at the surface and start warming water temperatures at the surface there. The question is, will there be another Kelvin wave and yet a third and a fourth behind that? We don't know, but with westerly anomalies forecast pretty much continuously over the Kelvin wave generation area in the months ahead, it seems very likely that that will happen. Sea height anomalies. Okay, this is a proxy for cold water measurement at depth. That is, you take data from the Jason-2 satellite, it measures the sphere of the ocean. Is it higher than lower than normal? All right, and let's get ourselves oriented. Chile, Peru, Central America, Hawaii here, the equator, the date line here. The reds and oranges are positive anomalies. So what's that mean? It means the ocean's a little bit higher than normal. Warm water at depth expands. When it expands, it displaces water up above it. So this is suggesting warmer water out to about this, and you can see it right here, like a tongue of warm water to about 130 west, which is pretty much what the other model is saying. With the colder water, now there was deep 15-centimeter anomalies. Cold water at depth, when it contracts, will create a divot on the ocean surface. So the colder water is retreating off to the east and not nearly as cold as it was even last week. All this is a very good sign, suggesting temperatures are warming subsurface, and when they warm subsurface, eventually that makes it to the surface, and once it hits the surface, the atmosphere will pick up on that, and then La Nina, theoretically, will collapse. Upper ocean heat anomalies. All right, this is the West Pacific here, East Pacific here. Oranges, reds, yellows, warmer than normal temperatures, the blues colder than normal. We see we're going back a year. Kelvin wave, January, pushed across the Pacific, cold upwelling, another weak Kelvin wave this past summer, and then more cold upwelling. It's just been locked in place. But here we go, and look at how much warmer the warming is in the far West Pacific compared to a year ago. There was none or very weak. Now things looking much more robust. And a Kelvin wave progressing across the Pacific, the dividing line at about 130 west today. And yet one more version of that chart, this showing it a little different, but upper ocean heat anomalies, upper 300 meters of the ocean surface, going back in time, last January, December, cold water, Kelvin wave in February, another cold upwelling phase, Kelvin wave in June, then the big cold wave that we've just been through, and you can see warming temperatures slowly making their way across the Pacific. Sea surface temperature anomalies. So what's going on at the surface? And just eyeballing this, the blues are colder than normal water. Same as what we've been seeing, cold water in control over the equator. But there's some interesting developments. For one, we know there is warm water that's pushing to, somewhere around 130, somewhere around here, all underneath all this cold water, down 300 meters, is much more warmer water pushing off to the east. Now, we see cold water, the coldest stream, that's the Galapagos there. This is Ecuador off here, Peru and Chile down here, Central America. The coldest waters are not nearly as cold as they were even a week ago. And what's even more interesting is look at this, warming building along Chile and Peru. We haven't seen that for a couple of years now. And that's not really attributable to the Kelvin wave. This is just attributable to weaker than normal trades in the area. That means there's less upwelling. The sun starts beating on the ocean surface. That starts warming the ocean surface. So there's a two-prong attack going on here. There's warm water pushing under this cool pool, the La Nina cool pool, but there's also slackening trades allowing water temperatures to warm here and even in pockets along the equator. So it seems like La Nina is getting squeezed from all directions, above, below, and from the sides. The sea surface temperature trend for the past 7 days, clearly you can see warming off of Chile and Peru, and bits of it working its way over the equator. And again, steady warming down south. I mean, even down to 20 south, something like that. The main cool pool is sitting like down like this area right here. So again, warming coming from all sides and from underneath it. Seems like La Nina is in trouble. And then the final overview picture, you can see the core central cold pool, not so strong, looking pretty weak. A lot of peripheral cooler waters steadily getting warmer week by week. Warm water developing, or warmer than normal water off of Chile and Peru, almost making it up to Ecuador, and all coming in from around the edges. Yeah, definitely, La Nina is getting squeezed. The sea surface temperature trend in the Nino 1.2 area, this is the region right there along Ecuador, the Galapagos, and Peru. Temperatures heading up, minus 777 thousandths of a degree, up considerably from, 2.25 degrees a little over a month and a half ago. So this is trending in the right direction, and not surprising given the warming we're seeing on the charts. Now, the official El Nino monitoring region, the Nino 3.4 region, that's the area. Well, in fact, let's go look at a chart. So Nino 1.2 is like right in here. Nino 3.4 is from here, 5 degrees north and south of the equator, out to 170 west, so right in here. You can see that area is still colder and will probably drop a little as that cold water at depth gets squeezed to the surface, then caught by the trades and dragged over into this region. But we know that the warming is coming. So today's values in the Nino 3.4 region are still negative, minus 1.138 degrees below normal. The La Nina threshold is a half degree below normal. When temperatures get above this line, then you're considered in neutral territory from half a degree below to half a degree above. If you can get above half a degree positive above normal, then you're in El Nino territory. We are nowhere close at the moment. But atmospherically and oceanically, significant things are changing, and the expectation is that this is going to start rising fairly quickly and pretty soon. So what does the atmosphere think is going on? All right, we're going to look at the difference in pressure between Darwin, Australia, and Tahiti. That's called the Southern Oscillation Index. When higher pressure is over Tahiti, the index goes positive. Today, 28.39, clearly positive. When lower pressure is over Tahiti, the index, as compared to Darwin, the index goes negative. So you see, it was negative just a couple days ago. So looking back in time, you see values above and below normal, but certainly not nearly as firmly in the 10 or plus 10 or above range as it had been for months and months and months. There's some softening in the pressure pattern here, suggesting that temperature or pressure over Tahiti is weakening some. And that would make perfect sense given that what we're seeing about westerly anomalies encroaching into the West Pacific, and just this general trend that the strong easterly trades and high pressure that has dominated the Kelvin wave generation area for 2 years now is finally giving way to at least a normal pressure pattern. Anyway, so the daily numbers, you can see they jump around a lot, but you average it out. 30-day average Southern Oscillation Index, today's value 10.08, up a little bit, but going back in time, well, we see we've been more or less, we were down to 4 or something like that in late November. That's probably what helped really fuel that Kelvin wave that's making its way across the Pacific now, is a weakening in pressure, weakening in trades. Now we're pushing back a little bit just recently, but not too bad. And then the 90-day average is the El Nino La Nina indicator. Today's value 12.70. What was it a month ago? 14.6. Coming down a little bit, but not a lot. We want to see this thing dropping to 0, or if anything, all these, we want to see these going at least to 0, if not negative, and staying there. The 30-day moving Southern Oscillation Index value today hovering right around 10. The upward spikes are the inactive phase of the MJO. The downward spikes are the active phase. So La Nina is characterized by more inactive phases than active phases. El Nino is characterized by the opposite, more active phases, less inactive phases. When you have more inactive phases, the index goes positive. Here's the 0 line right here. So you end up bopping around up in here, which is what we've been doing. But we've had a pretty good run of negative. We lost a little bit, but it seems like we're maybe trying to trickle down again. We want to see this index hovering somewhere around 0. At least that's neutral, and that would suggest the demise of La Nina. And then finally, the forecast for temperatures in the Nino 3.4 region, the official El Nino monitoring region. Well, today, what are we? About mid-December. So these lines are the middle of the month, middle of October, November roughly there, December roughly there. And theoretically, according to this is the raw data. From about today on, temperatures should start trending upward. Possibly driven by that Kelvin wave we're looking at, possibly driven by falling pressure over the Pacific, possibly driven by weaker than normal easterly anomalies, if not bordering towards neutral, all allowing upwelling to be dampened and warming starting to occur in the Pacific. And of course, once that happens, then you get more evaporation, more energy transport to the jet, and then that feeds the storm track, and then everything goes back to normal. All right, so the forecast is by mid-January, temperature's still negative, about minus 0.8 of a degree or 0.85 per the raw data, but then transitioning to ENSO neutral, half a degree is the dividing line, about the last week of the first week of February, maybe mid-February, something like that, then trending upward into theoretically El Nino as we get into the fall of next year, but that's a long ways away. Now that's the raw data. It's the PDF corrected data that we probably put more stock in. It suggests temperatures rising to about 0.8 of a degree in mid-January, and then into the ENSO neutral territory by about first week in February, and then completely neutral as we get into April. So a bit of a ways to go, but theoretically we are right on the cusp now of saying goodbye to La Nina. So for now, storm track looking much better. Hawaii to get a direct blow of energy, but then after that, a series of weaker systems pushing across the Pacific with the wall, the high pressure wall slowly getting squeezed closer and closer to the U.S. West Coast, theoretically breaking through 10 days from now with precip back into California. We're keeping our fingers crossed on that. And beyond that, the expectation is the jet will hold, and that more with the active phase of the MJO theoretically building over the West Pacific, the jet stream will only strengthen from there, and we might start working our way into a semi-normal sort of winter as we get into, we'll say, February and March, something like that. Beyond that, though, La Nina definitely looks like it's on its last legs. Massive Kelvin wave making its way slowly across the equatorial Pacific down about 300 meters. Probably should start erupting to the surface. Give it about a month, 6 weeks, something like that. And then sea surface temperatures rising. With that, trade should be weakening. And then it becomes sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy. Warm water pushing across, weakening the trades. The more the trades weaken, the more Kelvin waves get generated, the more the active phase of the MJO wakes up, and then slowly pushing us at least to neutral territory, if not bordering on El Nino a bit out, maybe by late in the winter, early part of spring, something like that. All right, so that's it for this week. If you enjoyed the video, give us a thumbs up, like and subscribe. Ring the bell, you get automatic notifications when the videos are posted, typically on Sundays. If you have not understood anything, or you have some questions, write them up in the comments section. We'll be happy to reply and try to clear up any misconceptions or questions you might have. All right, that's it for this week. Now, next week on Sunday is Christmas. We will probably not be producing a video, but if we get some time, maybe a couple days after that, sort of depending on how things go, we might do one. If not, we definitely will do it on New Year's night of the week after that. All right, that's it for this week. Have a happy holiday, happy New Year, stay safe, get some waves, have some fun, and we'll see you in the coming new year. Thank you.